welcome to the Nerds at Large Spoilercast for Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm one of your hosts, Darby Hallman.
I'm Jeff Mayo.
And we are joined by a very special guest, Chad Michael Innis from Respawn Aim Fire. How are you doing?
I'm doing so good, everybody. It's so great to see your faces.
I know, it's been a minute. I don't even remember what the last time, or I guess Game of Thrones.
No, I think we guessed on their podcast.
Was it Game of Thrones?
No, I think we guessed on yours podcast
right.
sometime late 2019.
But you might be
That sounds right, because Game of Thrones was like a year ago.
Right.
About,
Yeah.
It seems so long ago and also so far away.
Oh, yeah.
And also so close.
And also just bad memories. So I'm happy to talk to you about something better.
Hey, talking about it was fun.
Talking about it was fun.
Yeah, you're right.
It was cathartic. Well, anyone listening to this, make sure you have played all of Final Fantasy VII Remake, because we will be spoiling the mess out of it. We will also be spoiling, maybe not the mess out of, but we'll be spoiling the original games. Like all spoilers for original Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VII Remake are on the table. And just FYI, if you have only played the original and you think you're good listening to this podcast, you're not. Make sure you've played Remake, because we will be going into all the changes, and it's going to be a great time. I've been looking forward to this video since the beginning of our channel. Like, this has been like the central thing that I've wanted to talk about. So I am so stoked. So let's just get started by, I think we should probably just go around for anyone listening and just maybe say what our experience with Final Fantasy VII, the original, was before going into this. So Chad, why don't you start?
My original experience, I played it twice. Actually, my very first experience with Final Fantasy VII, short story here, I went to a family friend's house. His name was Reed, and I was maybe like 6 or 7, and he was playing this game, and he was playing the part with Corneo and talking about like, all the people are like, we're going to smash his dick. We're going to cut your balls, or whatever it is, cutting the balls off, smashing your balls. And I immediately went out and told his mom, I was like, man, Reed's playing a really cool game. And they're talking about cutting balls and things like that. I didn't know what that meant. And she's like, what? I got that game taken away from him. That was my very first experience with Final Fantasy VII.
The only one that truly mattered.
That's right. But then I did get it a few years later. My uncle gave me his copy, played it on a PS1, and then I played it again when I was like maybe like 16, so like half of my life ago.
Nice.
And I haven't played it since. There is one dungeon in Final Fantasy VII that was scratched on my disc that anytime I tried to go into whatever dungeon it was an optional one, it would always freeze. So I've never played whatever's in there. It's a huge mystery to me.
That was always terrifying as a kid when you got when someone would come over to your house and grab the disc and just like set it down or throw it somewhere, and you see a giant scratch. You're like, oh,
You owe me money.
I hope that's not important. Jeff,
so that's it. That's my original. It's been a minute.
So my experience, less than these guys. Not played the original, the whole thing. The most I did before, I guess you can say this week, is go a little farther than Midgar. I am playing through the original now that I finished the remake, and I'm at Costa del Sol. But as far as outside of the original Final 7, my history with this universe, I have played Crisis Core. I had watched Advent Children, strangely enough.
both of them around it.
Yeah, and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Did you play Dirge of Cerberus?
I played a little bit of it.
I did, and as a kid, I loved it. But now when I look back, that game is trash.
I never played it, but I always want, like, when I found out all of this like extra universe stuff existed, I think it was around when Crisis Core came out. I was like, oh, there's a Vincent game called Dirge of Cerberus. I want to play it. And then I read reviews. I was like, fuck, no, I'm not picking that up.
Oh, I was a kid. Vincent was my favorite character because he was the emo dude with a gun. So I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going for this. Yeah, and me, Final Fantasy VII is my favorite game of all time. This is a game that I first played it when my uncle gave it to me when I was like super young. And
look at that, Uncle's giving us games.
I know,
so good.
Yeah, he gave me his original PS1 copy that I put in the PS2 and played it, and even like it. And I absolutely fell in love with it. Definitely a big part of it was being that young, because like I'm actually kind of young for it to be my favorite game of all time. I feel like most people are like in their 30s or upper 20s or something. Like I was born in 95. This game came out in 97. You know, I was like 2 when this game came out. But I fell in love with it, even though I had already been playing games that had better graphics and everything. But I think a huge part was just the music and just so many things about it I absolutely fell in love with. And I've played it 2 times all the way through, but I've definitely played this Midgar section like who knows how many times, because I own the game on like pretty much every system you can own it on at this point. So I've been waiting for this game for quite some time.
I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy you get this.
I was probably annoying Jeff just in the lead up to this. Like ever since about a year ago when we saw that first trailer, I'm like, oh god, I'm allowed to get hyped for this game.
It's real.
It's like, yeah, the universe is like allowing me to actually care about this game now. And like, yeah, leading up to it, I guess now we can just talk surface level what we think about Final Fantasy VII Remake as a complete package now that we have actually played it as a real video game that I've played and restarted. I'm about halfway through the second playthrough. And legitimately, it is kind of insane how high of expectations I had for this game as a Final Fantasy VII super fan. And just, it is kind of unbelievable how many areas this takes everything that I loved about the original and like still has that and still like encapsulate and like, you know, has that same vibe, but just enhances it in every conceivable way. Just the environments are like, when I first walked into Sector 7 for the first time, I just started crying because you just start noticing all these things that you remember as a kid that were just on this like one little screen, but now it's this 3D environment. You can look up and see the plate, all these other things. And I think the characters have never been better than they are in this game. In so many ways, I legitimately do think that this game has surpassed the original, which is a wild thing for me to say, considering it's my favorite game of all time. I adore it. It has flaws. Like I've seen like some outlets gave this game like a 10 out of 10. If I was doing a critical look or whatever, this game has flaws that are pretty apparent. They're pretty easy to point out. And we will definitely get into those. But those never detracted enough to like take away from the things that it did so well. You know? Yeah. What do y'all want to go?
Go for it, Chad.
I love this game so much. I did have high expectations going into it. I did not expect it to be like the best thing I've ever played. So I feel like everything was met for me. I walked into it. The graphics for the character models are just stunning. The cinematics are stunning. And even the gameplay from just the first hour, which is like the demo that they released a couple weeks ago anyway, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Even though I'd already played it before. I already knew exactly what was going to happen and what it was going to look like. The combat is so fluid. I had so much fun with it. This is the first game I can remember where I've beat it once after spending 40 hours with it and then immediately gone back and played through the entire thing again, spending another 30 hours playing it on hard mode. In 2 weeks total, so 70 hours in 2 weeks. That's a full-time job. As you mentioned, yeah, it's not perfect. There are a lot of flaws with this game, but it doesn't matter because you love the characters, you love the story, you love how much they fleshed it out, and it really, for me, comes down to the combat and how customizable everything is with the materia system and the upgrade system, and it all feels so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just gonna echo what you guys said. This game's great. Like Chad said, the combat is excellent, which was definitely, I think, one of the primary fears people had going into this game, as far as, you know, just coming off Kingdom Hearts and Nomura and all that it would be more just like Devil May Cry-ish, like Kingdom Hearts is, like, or Bay's first Devil May Cry or whatever. But the way they kind of combine the action kind of gameplay that Square has done recently with the kind of turn-based ish system from the original game and the era of games, the way they combine them is excellent. Like Chad said, the upgrade system is excellent. Just the way you can customize characters is great, and I haven't played hard mode, but I can already tell some material I didn't use are essential for, I'm sure, that you learned.
Yep.
Yep. Story's great, especially since I just played through the original Midgar right after I got done. It's crazy how much they fleshed things out and how they took little things from the original game and just gave it this such a big part, or just gave it so much more screen time, or just and all that. Just really well done. And
yeah, for the vast majority of this game, obviously we'll get to the sections that don't, but for the vast majority of this game, I loved the way that they approached changes, because it really did seem like they looked at the story and then they took like every individual scene and they asked like, why is this happening? What is this character's motivations? And things like that just like in the original game, Avalanche is the best example. Like Jesse, Wedge, and Biggs were just grunts for the most part. Like they had a few characteristics for themselves, but for the most part, like they probably had a grand total of like 30 lines in the entire game, pretty much. I mean, that's probably about true. And it's just in this game, I love that like the beats are the same, but they hit so much harder in this game because they're like, we're going to make you care very deeply about all of these characters, and especially those three characters, and like you go into their backstory, like say like they're not just these one note characters. They're like you see them evolve and their relationship with Cloud evolve, and I imagine both of you probably feel the same way. I think is it chapter 4 is Jesse's? I think it's chapter 4.
Yeah.
I think that's one of my favorite chapters in the entire game, and that's a completely new chapter, but it was one of those where it's like that chapter seems such a good addition that I can't help but think that must have been something that was in their head even in the 90s, because you go up to the top plate and you see how the people up there are living and the difference between that and the slums, and then just seeing Jesse's backstory as soon as you walked in there and it's like, oh, she was a dancer in the Golden Saucer. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. You care about these characters so much more.
Yeah, that I think the development of the characters I think is what really hits for me. And in that chapter in particular too, we also get a lot of Wedge and like talking about his love for pizza, and we get like him making jokes about his weight and things like that. But then there are moments when you're walking towards like the objective towards the end where you're trying to get to the big battle area, and he just stops and plays with the cats on the side of the road, like through the fence. And it's like, Wedge, you're such an adorable little fluff ball. I love you so much. And you don't obviously get that from the polygonal model that we got in the first one with, as you mentioned, like 30 lines for all of the Avalanche characters total. So I think that chapter in particular really hits really well because how much it makes you care about all these people and fills in those gaps.
Mm-hmm. And it made it so exciting as a fan that, I was going through and I was absolutely loving the game up to that point and seeing like all these areas completely like changed and everything. But then like you leave Seventh Heaven and like everything's going more or less the way you remember or whatever. And you go back to your house or whatever, and Jesse's there and she says, hey, I have a mission, we're going up top. I'm like, what's going on? Yes, this is like and like this game for me, like it somehow walked that line so perfectly where like every 10 minutes I was getting nostalgia goosebumps, but then the next 10 minutes something was happening that I had no clue what was going to happen. Even though I was replaying this game, I felt like there were surprises around every turn.
As long as those whispers of fate didn't reign in the surprises too much.
Yeah, we would definitely get to those. I definitely want to, for this spoiler cast, one thing I've noticed from a lot of spoiler casts I've listened to is a lot of them get very hung up on talking about the ending for the entire time, which we definitely will talk about it a lot. Like it's going to be a sizable portion of this, but I definitely don't want to like neglect the core game. And it's
How about all the good shit?
Yeah, and
the not so good
all
shit.
All that good shit.
And I think the combat is definitely something we can talk about because, like you said, we had talked about going into this. It's like, is it going to be a turn-based system with fancy graphics, or is it going to be a full-on action game? None of us had really contemplated the fact that they would create a completely new battle system that has never been done before. Because like this battle system feels so unique. So unique because somehow it really does like, and when you look at it on the surface, you can say like, oh, it's a hack and slash game, but it does not feel like that. It somehow feels like the original game, and I'm making a lot of the same internal decisions that I made in the original game. But the fact that positioning and parrying and blocking and stuff matters, and those things just like meld together perfectly. You know,
I think it's one of those games like God of War 2018, where if you're watching it, it looks like a hack and slash, and it's like, oh yeah, he's just swinging his axe, he's doing that, he's Cloud's swinging his Buster Sword in a couple of ways. But when you're playing it, you are making all of those decisions like very purposefully. Like, oh, I know he's about to do this animation, so I'm going to make sure that I block at the right time and parry it, all these kind of things. And I love that's why God of War 2018 is my favorite game. It's just like, I love how fluid it all feels, but also that you have to choose every single, especially as you get into hard mode, like every single attack, every single spell ability you use has to be planned and for a reason, which is really cool.
Yeah, especially boss fights, I think, is where this game shines the absolute most. And especially later on, like me and Jeff talked about, I think it's about like Hell House onwards. Like every boss fight gets to the point where it's like the game was never like so hard that I'm dying over and over again, which I was happy about because it was paced so well. I want to keep going with the story. This is not really a game, at least my first playthrough, it's not a game that I wanted to be dying over and over again. But it was that perfect sweet spot where I wasn't really dying, but I felt like I was going to. I was like very close. And some of those boss fights, it's like everyone's in the red and the boss is... Uh-oh.
Did we lose him?
We might have lost Chad. Oh,
nope.
Chad's still there?
I can hear you.
Okay.
We lost us. That's weird. Why did the camera turn? Okay.
Hey, you're back.
I don't really know.
Oh, well, we're back.
Oh, well, we here. Make sure everything's still going. All right. Okay. Yeah, in those boss fights, you get to the point where, like, all my party's in the red, but the boss is really low. So I'm like, do I heal or do I just go for the limit break? I'm like, I'm just going to go for the limit break. Let's do this. I'm just going to go. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times, in hard mode specifically, how many times I accidentally won a boss fight. Like in hard mode, there's not much different about hard mode aside from the fact that you can't use items at all.
Which sounds like a big difference, but
it kind of does. But then you get used to it, and you get used to like pray and chakra and all these kind of things. But the boss fight, like even because you have all your materia, like the regular battles actually kind of feel easier, and then you get to the bosses, and that's where you're like the stamina of rationing out your MP over the entire battle. That's where it really gets tough. But there were maybe 80% of all the boss battles that I fought ended with one or two of my party members dead, the other person with like 5 MP left, and I just happened to like, oh, that person died, so their summon wiped out the boss. Or I happened to get a limit break at the very, very last second and killed the boss. There were so many times that happened. And I was just like, this all feels like an accident. I can't say that I beat this and feel good about it, for sure.
You didn't even know that he was that low because you were too busy trying to survive. Oh, he's dead.
Nothing wrong with failing upwards.
That's right.
I just love that, like, thinking about that, like, the boss falls and Cloud's like, oh, shit. Okay. Oh, I did it.
But I do think in normal mode specifically, you mentioned it like being paced well, and I feel like the difficulty was perfect on normal. Mm-hmm. Holden asked me before he got to Hell House, he was asking me, he was like, does it get harder? Because I feel like it's kind of easy. I was like, I wouldn't say it gets hard, but it's consistently challenging enough to keep me really invested in it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I never felt like, I didn't die. I died a couple times in the beginning just as I was learning the mechanics of the game. But after that, I don't think I died the rest of the game on normal mode. And it's just because I felt like I was continually getting better, but I was also like, as you mentioned, you're kind of in the red towards the end of the battle, and it's just like that excitement of being able to, am I going to finish or am I not? But then I would always finish it. It's like, it always maintained that level of excitement for me without dipping into the boss fights of like Dark Souls, where it's punishing, but then after you beat it, you're like, yeah, I feel so good. So you feel good for other reasons.
Right, yeah. I mean, this game was like, it was too story and character-driven focused for like, it wasn't really a game that you want to be like crushingly hard on that first playthrough. But like you said, it was perfect. Like, yeah, maybe it's a little too easy at the beginning, but it's a long enough game to where I think that easy build up period is kind of okay, because you get to like, yeah, I mean, Hell House was like the central thing that I thought that was where like from this point onwards, it's like every boss fight was something you had to do the mental math for. The only thing I could see someone like, I think you could probably get by on this game for a long time without really engaging with the character swapping and doing all of that. But at a certain point, you have to do it. But yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, for some, I feel like there definitely somewhere, if you don't switch to Barrett, in particular, you might have a rougher time. Or Aerith as well, just because they're both more long range. And considering the specifically enemies in general, and especially bosses, aggro to whatever you're controlling, just kind of get them away from other people is kind of crucial.
Yeah, and that is one thing definitely kind of versus, I mean, the original Final Fantasy VII, I love the materia system to death, but kind of because of the materia system and because of how much weight that holds in the original game, all of the characters are more or less the same. Like, they have some different stat distributions, but it's not really severe enough to where it's kind of more, who do you like? You know, what character do you like or like the design of? But like, who you actually pick doesn't really matter that much. Mm-hmm. But like, I love that in this game, instead of going down that route, they went like, no, all 4 of these characters, especially since it's only Midgard, it's only gonna be 4 characters, we're gonna make all 4 of them play completely differently. And it's not really one of those, at least I think, if someone comes and says, oh, who's your favorite character to play? I don't have an answer, because like you have to play all of them, or I love switching to all of them for different situations. Like, I can't even tell you a favorite right now, because like I played all 4 of them about equally, just, you know, in different situations.
Yeah, I thought I was going to go into this and just straight up like main Cloud and then control everyone else using the triggers, but no, I was jumping back and forth between Tifa and Aerith. The only one I didn't really so much enjoy was Barrett, just because I felt like he was really one note. But and then he was also like my tank and my healer, so it's like healer is not something I've always enjoyed playing. But I was surprised how much I enjoyed playing as Tifa. Tifa's such a badass. She's so cool.
Building up the like meter thing or whatever, like the unbridled strength thing or whatever, and then unleashing all of that is so satisfying. And it's such a cool nod to the original, because like her limit breaks all stack on top of each other, and that was like this game's version of doing that. And like, you have to build up for a long time, but if you do, it's like boom, 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 boom. It's awesome. And Aerith, like, I was really surprised by how much I loved playing Aerith, because like Aerith definitely is kind of the most unique one, and like, she's kind of situational, but like, especially in boss fights, whenever you would like I would put down the ability that allowed you to cast 2 spells at once. Yeah. And then after you do that, like, I had her magic attack so high that I would like put that down and then do like 2 max thunder spells, and it was like thousands of damage at once. It's just ridiculous.
How badass is Ray of Judgment?
Oh yeah, let's go.
Oh my god, that was my go-to thing for her. I was just like, I would start out with her with a first strike materia equipped, and then she also had the Whistlewind scarf that you can get that increases your ATB at the start of battle. Mm-hmm. So basically, right at the start of battle, I just immediately Ray of Judgment, whoever is the most dangerous person here, and it would just take them down halfway or all the way, depending on how weak they were. That shit is so cool.
Yeah. There's a lot of abilities in this game, and I also think the way that they do abilities is really cool, because it kind of incentivizes you to like go try out the other weapons, where I'm definitely someone who kind of gets locked down on, no, this is my weapon. But I like that it like, because you have to use one of them for a while, you have to use that ability on that weapon for a while, and then you can unlock it for good. And just the weapon upgrade trees, because in so many RPGs, it usually does the thing where, you know, you have this weapon and you go to the next town and you buy another weapon and your old weapon is obsolete. Like it's weak, and it's you can't like the Buster Sword. It's kind of funny because it's iconic, but it's like the weakest weapon in the game. It's a piece of shit stat wise in the original game.
That's the thing that kind of sucks because it's supposed to hold so much weight to Cloud and all that stuff, and you just toss it aside within like the first hour or whatever.
But in this game, like I honestly think this is kind of a revolutionary thing that I hope that other RPGs do, where like every weapon you can use the Buster Sword the whole time because like the weapons don't get better than each other. They're just different. They just have different play styles or different stat distributions. So literally any weapon on any character is viable for the entire game, depending on how you want to build it.
I'm so glad about that because it was so nice to have in those ending cutscenes Cloud having the Buster Sword on my playthrough. It's like, this feels right.
God. I had one cutscene where it's after you're 14, I think, or it's at the beginning of chapter 14. Mm-hmm. And it's where you have the option of 3 scenes depending on some choices that you've made. Yeah. And you can see either like Tifa and you're comforting her, or you see Aerith and she kind of shows like a projection or a dream or something like that. Or there's one with Barrett. And I had it with Aerith, and it was this really like deep conversational scene. And Cloud had the fucking knife or the baseball bat with the spikes sticking out of it on his back. And I'm like, oh my God. This really cool, touching cutscene with like I'm trying to take screenshots of everything, and he just has this stupid nail bat in the cutscene. I'm like, dang it.
Yeah, the nail bat I pretty much just used it and got the move, and then I never used it again.
Yeah, me too. It was so slow. It was so slow.
I think it's just supposed to be more of a nod thing that they just had to throw in.
I mean, I think it's kind of similar to the original game. I think you have no materia on it, and it's just like a very like...
You can get materia on it, but because I leveled it up just to see its stats when I first got it. But yeah, after that, I was like, nah, not worth it. They went to whatever else.
And that was another thing that's cool is even weapons that you're not using, you still get points to upgrade for. So you can upgrade all your weapons and then look at them and be like, okay, now which one do I want to choose? It's not one of those things where like you have a pool of points that are spread across all of them, because if it was like that, then you would just be like, all right, well, this is the one I'm choosing and putting everything to that.
Well,
but
what was really nice about that, because I said I used the Buster Sword in the end. I didn't use the Buster Sword for a lot of the middle chapters, but at some point I decided, okay, let's just see how all the weapons stack up, or at least, a couple of them. The Buster Sword surpassed, at least as far as what I wanted to use Cloud for, all the other weapons. Like, okay, the Buster Sword's back, baby, let's go.
Back for the end.
It felt wrong at some of those last scenes and not being there.
You just knew Sephiroth was gonna knock it right in front of the camera.
It needed to be there.
I had Hard Edge for the wall market onwards, but
Hard Edge was my go-to for a while, and then I did the Mithril Shard or Mithril something.
Mithril Saber.
Yeah, Mithril Saber. I did that for the end of my normal playthrough and for about half of my hard playthrough, and then I ended up going back to Hard Edge after that. After I realized that like I need more damage output, less magic, more damage, more physical damage.
Yeah, I had Barrett and Aerith were like my 2 magic people, and Tifa and Cloud were both more tuned to attack.
What I pretty much did is all in on Aerith for magic and all in on Tifa pretty much for physical attack, and Barrett and Cloud were somewhat of a mix.
Yeah.
Barrett was basically just there to heal people, and he had a couple of magic attacks that I rarely used, but it was mostly just healing and taking damage for me.
I found Barrett useful in some of the harder boss fights later to like kind of like Jeff said, to get attention away. Like if there was too much damage going on right here, I'll switch to Barrett, and then it kind of like, especially later in the game, switching to another character just makes the boss like beeline towards you just immediately. Yeah. So sometimes that was better because like Barrett could just like pressure them from
definitely that away. Behemoth fight.
Oh yeah. That was definitely, I wish I wasn't using Barrett as much then. I should have been, because like Barrett was very good for boss fights for me, because it also like you switch to Barrett and it's like, okay, now I have time to breathe. I can kind of just like fire away at him and like think about what I'm doing for a second. Yeah.
What were some of your favorite boss battles?
Me, like, it's hard to, I think this might be my favorite battle mechanics and context wise, but especially context. That Hell House fight made me like, whenever, I mean, the whole Coliseum was just perfect, like perfect. That was another addition that just made it makes total sense that Don Corneo would have this seedy Coliseum that he just decides the rules on his whim. Like all of that just like was perfect. And then when it got to, it was like, okay, Corneo's he has one more match and everything, and they were obviously playing it up. So I was like, in my head, I was thinking, is it gonna be Vincent? Like, what the hell? Like what kind of shit can this be? What are they gonna pull? And they said Hell House, and it comes out there. I literally I shouted out. I was like, no way, no way, because Hell House is just a normal ass enemy in the original Final Fantasy VII. It's just a weird, wacky. Hell House is kind of emblematic of just how weird Final Fantasy VII is, and part of why I love it is that you have this gritty sci-fi Blade Runner world, but then you also have a walking house that breathes fire on you because, of course.
Yeah, why not?
And leading up to the remake, Hell House was one of the central things that everyone online always said, this remake, it's never going to be as wacky as the original. Like, how would you do Hell House in a realistic looking game? Like, it'll never happen. I have to believe that this fight was partially made because they were reading those online comments and they knew. And they're like, oh, motherfuckers, we're not only are we going to do it, it's a boss fight. And that was just so hype. Hype.
I think I told you this, Darby, but after you ended up doing the fight. But when I was doing the Hell House fight, the way Darby and I lived together, or whatever, I played the whole game in my bedroom. When I got to the Hell House fight, during the fight in the Coliseum, they keep on saying Hell House, the announcers do. I kept on hearing Darby go by and into his room or whatever. I was like, Darby, don't hear this. I would have been so bummed. And that was Chad. I don't know if you've go back and watch that final trailer. It's ridiculous. They spoil the entire game. Hell House is in the trailer.
I haven't watched it because I read a headline that says, don't watch this trailer.
No, watch it now.
We didn't watch it then.
Yeah, we watched it after we finished the game. We were both like, this is absurd, I must say. They showed Sephiroth stabbing Barrett. They showed a whole lot of the ending chapter.
Yes,
they showed Hell House.
It's ridiculous.
They showed Zack.
Did they really?
Yes.
I mean, you technically.
Oh my god, they spoiled everything.
Yeah.
Like the moments you just mentioned, stabbing Barrett. When I saw Zack, I literally had texted my friend Matt. I was like, holy shit, it's Zack. I was like, it would have ruined all those things for me.
You technically, it didn't show his head, but if you knew anything, if you knew the Crisis Core area and stuff, you could have figured it out. It was
Yeah, or even if you guys didn't even recognize it because you guys did. Wait, Chad, have you played Crisis Core?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then Dari, just playing the original game, you probably, if you saw that, you probably would have put 2 and 2 together. That
probably not, yeah.
It's not that hard to figure out even without knowing he's in the game.
Well, what was your favorite boss fight?
Hell House was definitely one of the top ones for sure.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, I'm not usually a fan of big, gross, giant monsters that are just gross for the sake of looking gross. But the Genova battle, Genova Dreamweaver,
yes.
I felt was a really cool battle, and that was also one where it was a little bit of a puzzle. Don't you dare hit this motherfucker in his second phase.
Right.
Go take out all the tentacles and things like that. So it was challenging, but also kind of just a cool mechanics fight as well.
Yeah, and Genova.
I can tell you one I hated.
Yeah, go for it.
Darkstar and Rufus.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people. Cloud.
Yeah, what did you hate about that one?
So until I got to that fight on hard mode, so I'd played the game basically 190%. And before I got to that moment on hard mode, I had never really used the counter stance ability.
I use that all the damn time. Yeah.
Yeah, I had not, and I had never used the steadfast block materia. I was not really big on blocking up until that fight the second time.
Yeah.
So yeah, playing it the first time, I took out Darkstar real easy the very first time, and I was like, okay, cool. But then it was just such a small window of attacking Rufus after that it was so frustrating. And then the second time, it was just if I wasn't able to take out Darkstar fast enough, within 2 minutes, and they were able to get one attack in on me, then they would just double team me. Just one person hits me, the other person hits me, and I would just never be able to recover. And it was so frustrating.
Yeah, I definitely get that. Like, especially if you had not been accustomed to using that. Like, and I've talked to like different people, kind of ignored certain parts of the game. Like, I ignored other combat things or whatever. But Punisher mode is definitely one that I was using a lot. And I kind of liked that fight just because it was a mix up. We've had so many boss fights in this game, and like that one just felt very different. Like, you can't just unload a bunch of enemy abilities on him because he's just going to counter it and throw you on your ass. Like, I like that it made you have to like dodge, and you have to kind of like read his animations in certain ways. And it kind of treated it like the original boss fight, where it's very like, he does just like a react, and it's very fast paced. It's easy as hell in the original one, but in this one, like, yeah, I like that one, but I definitely get it. It's obnoxious when you're just being thrown on your ass time after time.
Yeah. I am grateful to that boss battle though, because that was like the counter stance ability was 95% of my strategy in beating all of chapter 18. Like, if I had not been prepped with that from Rufus, there's no way I would have beat the final chapter on hard mode for sure.
Well, I kind of I was kind of the opposite. I used Punisher mode too much, so I definitely sometimes I would use it and stare down an enemy, and they stop. They're like, I'm not going to attack you. It's like the AI definitely knows. Like, we know what you're doing. We're not going to do that. Yeah, we can start talking about some story stuff. We've talked about a lot of combat, which I think is phenomenal in this game. It really is. It's one of the core pillars. Like, even if the combat wasn't this good, I would have loved the story and everything else. But it just nails the Final Fantasy VII, and the fact that the materia system works the same way as it does in the original, even though it's a completely different battle system, which is so cool to me. Like, they didn't really have to like. You still basically, it's called magnify, but you still have all fire or elemental fire or like, steel and all these other things like that. Like, it's like, if I went back to my original FF7 playthrough, I bet my materia build is about the same as it is in this game, which is so cool. Yeah,
I appreciated that the summons just had its own slot. It's like, okay, this is the summon materia for this character. Don't have to use a normal slot for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I had the DLC summon, so Carbuncle, the healing one, definitely saved my ass multiple times. She had to be nice on the hard mode.
Fat Chocobo!
He's so fat. It's so fat.
Man, I was going after the trophy because I'm so close to the platinum. I just got to beat a couple of the Shinra challenges. But I went after the trophy for the 300% damage.
Yeah.
And I did it on the Fat Chocobo, and I used like Tifa's True Strike and stuff like that. That thing went down in literally like 45 seconds. Nice. I took down Fat Chocobo because I ended up getting it to like 500% damage. It was crazy.
Nice. He is a big boy. He's for that.
He was.
I mean, so what did y'all think about the fact, part of going into this game, part of the question was, how linear is it going to be versus open versus somewhere in between? What did y'all think about just the environments and the areas that you got to explore in this game? Like, whether it's Sector 7 or Sector 5 or Wall Market, which is definitely my favorite. All right, what did y'all think about these?
Going into it, when I talked about it for the first time on our podcast, I had played 20 hours, and I was at the end of Chapter 11, which is the train graveyard. And I'd said, like, there's one thing that I'm really kind of upset about this game is that it all looks the same. It's all a lot of rundown cities and tunnels and like broken up shit. But then the last half of the game, like that was the first half, and then the last half of the game, there is so much more. There's you get to explore Wall Market a little bit more. You get to explore the Shinra building, all this kind of stuff. So I was upset for the first half of the game, but now I'm like, oh no, there is definitely a lot of diversity in all of this. Even if you do end up revisiting a lot of it all in Chapter 14, it still feels fresh because of all the different things that you're doing in those same environments.
Yeah. As far as the scenery goes, I do kind of agree with Chad. A lot of it can be kind of samey, but that's just because of the way the original game is, because it's a small section of this whole giant game. Yeah. So it makes sense.
Right. Well, we played for 40 hours. Yeah. Originally, it was this is like 7, maybe. So it's not going to get old that hard.
Yeah. It's noticeable like how samey these environments can be when you're playing it in this game, but there's definitely a certain charm to it. There are definitely some environments that had more of charm than the others. The reactors I thought were great. A sewer level is a sewer level. That's usually.
I was thinking that playing it the second time too. It was like
the case?
Everybody loves a sewer level. They love these rats in the sewers, and it's like it's never fun. I don't go to a sewer like I love waiting around in poop water.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess this is where we can I think we can get into probably the most obvious flaw of this game, I think. Or I mean, maybe side quest is the most obvious flaw, but this is up there. I think while the environments and like how faithful they were and how lived in everything feels is amazing, it reminds me of Red Dead Redemption 2 almost, of just, you go through after a story event and NPCs are talking and it's just like there's so much cool world building. All of that is like top notch. I think the actual level design is pretty bad for a lot of sections of this game. There are a lot of things that it seems like they knew that they had these cool linear environments, but they said, well, it can't just all be combat. We have to have other things to do. But like I immediately think of like the Tomb Raider games or Uncharted, and like it's a very similar pacing of game and those, but they just have a lot more quality in their puzzles and like side activities and everything. In this game, it really felt like most of the time when you did a puzzle or something, it was they're trying to break up the monotony, but they're not really too great at designing them. Like the robot hands are definitely, I think, everyone's primary.
That was, oh my god, that was the biggest offender for me.
I love the concept of it, that it's just one little thing in this area and they made it bigger. But I'm not doing that to that could have been a lot better.
Yeah, no, we talked about the fact that the robot hand was just like one random robot hand in one of the screens in the original 7. You don't do anything with it. It's just random giant robot hand there. And I loved it in this game. They're like, okay, what does that mean? Like, oh, they use that for like construction and stuff. Like that's cool world building, but yeah, the actual like process of doing it, you walk up and you immediately know what the answer is, but you just have to very slowly like lift things up.
Dude, I mean, honestly, I didn't even feel like that was not really that bad. I mean, I don't necessarily think it needed to be there, but as far as it's like this is whatever, until that last one where you were moving around stuff so much, partly you can get that one-off material to the side. It's like this thing's so freaking slow.
And then you don't realize that the top hand can't go all the way down to the ground.
Yes.
So you've got to stack.
Everyone did that.
Move this back.
Yeah. And it's not like I immediately think of like Shadow of the Tomb Raider had a lot of areas where I'm stopped and I'm like, I'm stumped. What do I do or whatever? But it was always like thought provoking. When I found the answer, I'm like, oh shit, okay. I was looking at this the wrong way. Final Fantasy, like in this, like that was like one of the few puzzles that I got stuck on, and it was not a satisfying thing. It was, God damn, all right, Aerith, get back on. I gotta take you all the way back over here.
Yeah, well, everything was stuck. It's like, man, this thing just goes by this arm just way too slow. It's like
one saving grace though. Did you guys get the robot hand and hit Aerith over and over and over again with it?
No, because I'm not a monster.
It's really funny. You can take it, just go like bam, bam, bam. She's just. I was hoping there was going to be like a line, Chad, I don't know if you know, but in the demo and also in the main game in the first reactor, the laser puzzles, the laser thing or whatever that hit you. If you get hit by that laser over and over again, Jesse has a bunch of lines of dialogue like making fun of you. And that line of dialogue,
I heard a couple of them. Yeah.
It ends with, "Do you have a fetish or something?" And I was really hoping
Jessie
was
so thirsty.
She was okay.
Everything with her was just like, Cloud, give me that D. And he was just like, that guy, Cloud, has 3 women just like all over him. And he's so indifferent. He's so...
Fuck that guy.
I'm yelling at him. Cloud, just let one of them do you.
Take your pick. Yeah, I will say, like, the character development, I think, was phenomenal in this game, and all these characters, I love all of them, and I love all of these characters and everything. It definitely got grating after a while where I'm like, okay, every single attractive woman wants to fuck Cloud. Like, every single one of them. There was even
and he's not a... He looks cool, which I get it. Like, oh, you see a guy and you're like, oh my God, that guy's cool. Let's fuck. But he's not an attractive person on the inside that we know so far. I mean, everything he has is a one-word answer. He brushes everybody off who tries to get close to him.
He has crazy headaches and falls to the ground.
Yeah, it's like, What is attractive about that?
The
Meanwhile, you
mystery
got
of the
Wedge
headaches.
over here, who's a genuinely great guy. He has cats and pizza.
It's true.
That poor guy can't get anybody.
Kind of the thing that cemented it for me was like in Honeybee Inn in the original, when you go into the dancers like dressing room, there's someone you talk to, and she's in this game too. In the original one, you talk to her and she's like, "Oh God, this creep's in our dressing room. Oh God," and, like she's grossed out by you, like get out of here. In this one, you talk to her and she's like, "Ooh, you should stick around here." I'm like, okay, everyone is thirsty for Cloud.
Of course.
I wouldn't be surprised if like Barrett turns to the end and tries to kiss you, and you're like, "No."
Where are the people thirsty for Barrett? I'm just saying.
Because all he does is scream.
But I love Barrett so much. I know we're jumping around.
He's great.
Like Barrett and he's one of those, like in the original, like he definitely is born from a kind of bad stereotype, like Mr. T, the thing of black people or whatever. But in this game, like but you kind of fell in love with him even back then. In this game, they keep that personality, but they explain why he has that. Like that is who he is. It's not like this caricature. He is like actually that passionate. And then when you like start seeing, like he's like screaming about everything, but then whenever you see his family life, like he's just that passionate about saving the people he loves and about Marlene and about all of these or whatever. And even at the end, like the moments when he's talking to Cloud are adorable. Like the bromance that they end up like forming is just so good. And when you get to the end of this game, like I was telling to Jeff over and over again, when you think about the journey and how Cloud and Barrett talk to each other at the beginning versus the end, it's like you went on a freaking journey here. Like these characters have changed so much from beginning to end.
Yeah, and again, just going back to me kind of going through the original game right now, they kind of talk like that at the end of Midgar in the original game. It's like, this definitely doesn't feel nearly as earned. Because like, man, Bear, it doesn't feel like you weren't even around like half the time for in the original game for this point.
But when you get to that end, whenever they're and I love the chapter leading up to the Shinra Mansion when you see like the sunset and everything, the Sector 7 plate, like that design wise, like environment was one of the best. But when they had that line where they talked about like, well, I guess we'll just have to build another bar. It's like, are you in, Cloud? And he says like, for the right price. And it's like, that's like a movie level of dialogue where like they called that back multiple times of like, you know, he starts out at the beginning of the game, he's like, yeah, I'll do it for the right price. And then in this one, he says it and has like this little grin. It's like so subtle. And I'm not used to Square Enix having this level of subtlety in their writing. I'm just really not used to it. Oh, it's so good. Oh, it's so damn good. Well, what were some of your favorite story moments? What were the ones that like stood out to you the most?
Should we just talk about Wall Market?
Oh, God.
God, Wall Market, just that whole chapter. God, it was so good.
It's straight up Yakuza. It was like Final Fantasy VII Yakuza. And
I've never played Yakuza, but if it's anything like that, I'll play it.
All of Yakuza is basically that. It's just like wacky stories, like you walking around just having like these very offbeat, crazy things. And like that dance sequence looks straight up from a Yakuza game.
Best part is, Chad, it's like 100 games of Wall Market.
God, the dance sequence. You just brought up the dance sequence. How freaking good was that? Oh my God. The whole time I was just like, I hope this is one of those mini games I can go back and replay. And you can't. You just got to play the game again or play the chapter again. It's like, God, that was so good.
It came out of nowhere, even though I knew that they were going for more of like a, you know, Vegas dance thing here or whatever. I was just not expecting all of that. Hey, are you still there? We just lost our video again. Hey, you there?
Got audio back and videos back.
I don't know what keeps happening. Oh well. Yeah, that whole section just like came out of nowhere, and I like loved it so much. Yeah. That was so good. When me and Jeff, you heard our discussion. I mean, I'm like, or no, we didn't have that discussion. Sorry, it was. We've talked about this game too many times. Like the Wall Market is something, and the whole cross-dressing sequence and everything in the original game is something that definitely does not hold up super well, and it's very problematic by like today's standard. And there's a lot of times when you replay it, there are sections that it's pretty much just straight up like making fun of gay and trans people. It's just like straight up, it's a punchline and a joke. And this is one of those things that people are talking about, like, oh, sure, they can't do this in this game or whatever. It's too bad and everything. And if they had just completely omitted it, I wouldn't have been sitting here complaining. I would have been saying, like, yeah, that makes sense and everything. But it shows so much what, like, their philosophy in making this game, that instead of omitting it, they're like, how do we take this and, like, change the message of it, and, like, take this and, like, still keep what you, like, remember, and, like, largely a lot of the same things happen, but the tone of it is so much different and so much better. Like, even though the same things are happening, you leave and it's like you felt like Cloud is a fish out of water, and it's funny because it's supposed to be funny. Like, I don't think it's wrong for it to be funny, but, like, you don't, like, Andrea and all these people are not looked at like, oh, let's laugh at these people. It's like, no, they're kind of like, there's these people that just live this, like, very different life, and, like, they have things figured out in a way that you don't. And it was just, even when you walk around with Cloud, like, in the dress, a lot of people are like, hell yeah, you look like she looks good, or this or whatever. Like,
right.
And even if you try to leave the wall market in the original game, it's like, are you sure you want to walk around like that? Like, are you sure? And in this game, it's just like, no. It's like, oh, okay, cool. And
Eris freaking loves it in this game.
And whenever you see Tifa, I love, one of my favorite lines is Tifa saying, that hair in that dress. He's like, yeah, nailed it. Anyway, let's go.
Yes. That was maybe my favorite line in the whole thing.
Yeah, it was just that whole section was just handled so much better. I just loved it.
I even think, like, even the fact that in Wall Market, when you walk into the gym and you see, like, you're not fighting, but challenging Jules as well. It's just like, Jules is not a punchline. Jules is, like, the freaking pro, and it's hard as shit. And I think you're right. The way that they took that whole segment that could have been really controversial and just, like, made it a part of the game without calling it out and saying, look at us doing good. It's just like, no, like, these are people, and they're probably more figured out and better than you are right now. I think it was a really well done, really, like, the right thing to do as well, and the right way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, walking into the gym when I saw him, like, he had the makeup and everything, like, you would kind of assume that he had in the original. And I did when I walked in there. I was like, oh boy, all right. Slightly worried. And it's like, no, he's an awesome character. It's just great. Yeah.
Did you guys have as much trouble as other people are having with the pull-up challenge?
Not at all.
No, I didn't want to go.
I didn't either. I did it it took me 3 tries and I got it. But man, everybody is talking to me like, oh my God, these damn pull-ups. I've tried it 50 times, 60 times, and they can't. I was like, I don't understand what's so hard.
I think I skipped the instructions.
I know I do CrossFit in real life, but
yeah. I think for the squat one, I failed the first time because I just kind of skipped the instructions or wasn't paying attention. But then I got it easy on the second try. Then and the pull-ups kind of like, okay, pretty much the same thing. Let's go.
Yeah, I hate that, like, I'm the first to say I'm terrible at, like, all video games pretty much, but this was definitely something that I messed up the first time when it started doing the, like, it's not just in the order, it's going all over the place, but I got it the next time. I mean, it's kind of stressful, but definitely didn't feel like a crazy thing. But I mean, maybe it's because I've played the Midgar section of Final Fantasy VII 1,000 times, and it is pretty much the same thing. It's just changed a little bit, but... Yeah, I didn't get all of that. I had a lot harder time with the darts in Seventh Heaven. Still not, like, terrible, but that gave me.
I did great with the darts. Yeah. I got what I needed to get the first time, whatever the prize is, and then I realized, if I got 10 more points, I'd get a trophy. I was like, cool, let me do it again. I got it that time. I'm just so good.
You're just too good, man.
Just too good, man.
Yeah. What are you doing on here?
Yeah.
I'm writing this off as charity on my taxes.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Nice.
Thank you.
We appreciate your service. Yeah, I mean, Wall Market is definitely probably my favorite single chapter in the game. Mm-hmm. It's just too good all the way around. What was Wall Market your favorite, do you think, Chad?
I think so.
Yeah, like, Jesse's chapter is up there for me too. Just
like,
of the
I feel like it's
story,
a weird, depending when you ask me, a weird tie between chapter 4, the Jesse one, the Wall Market chapter 12 where the plate fell, and Shinra headquarters.
Yeah.
It's like those are.
Yeah, I think okay. So from like a story and like experience, like cinematic type view, I really liked those chapters, but then the last 4 to 6 hours of this game, like the end of chapter 16 all the way through the end of 18, is just so good to me. That that's the standout. That's the standout.
All right. Any last sanity that you want to like get off our chest before we dive into the crackpot until we achieve level 4? We get achieve level 4 in this podcast.
I don't know if we're ready for anything we want.
I mean, that Shinra. I have to talk a little bit about the Shinra Museum area. Because I was so engrossed in that. As soon as I walked in there, especially as a super big fan of the original, they take just like, again, things that were just like little, like a little asset, like a little like picture off in the corner of the original, and turn it into, oh, this is how it's used in the military. This is how it's used for this or whatever. And you see all these models and everything. That was just so freaking cool. Like it felt like walking in a real museum, but one that I was way more interested in.
And that ancient thing.
Yep. Yes, the like immersive video one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I skipped, when I played hard mode, I skipped most cutscenes, but I made sure that when I got to that one, I rewatched that one. I was, God, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
I that's one of the few things I haven't rewatched yet. I have to go see that again because it was phenomenal, and it's one of those things that like that portrayed the whole ancients and everything better than the entire original game ever did. You know,
very important thing about the Shinra Museum. It pretty much confirms a long-standing fan theory related to Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy X. They're in the same universe.
Really? I missed that.
So it's a very easily missed thing that most people won't know because a lot of people didn't play Final Fantasy X.
All right, everybody keep track. That's number one of making Chad realize a theory that he didn't know. Let's see how crazy we get.
Okay. So in Final Fantasy X too, there's this kid.
Oh, you're right. I gave up on 10 too.
Yeah. The kid named Shinra who wore a mask. That's the most you really need to know as far as that goes. He was, smart little kid, blah, blah, blah. In President Shinra's section in the museum, there's a very old picture. You see an adult who's wearing the exact same mask as Shinra and Ten2.
Oh.
I'm not saying it's going to lead to anything, but it's a cool little Easter egg. And just kind of confirmation.
That's something people have been like speculating about since 10 came out, right? Or 10-2.
Yeah. Pretty much. I think before we go, maybe we should talk about just how epic all the stuff was, like in Chapter 12 with the plate falling. And
oh, man. Yeah, sorry. Barrett, at the end when the plate fell and he ran up, just his whole reaction. Like, I talk about there are a few times, obviously, again, favorite game of all time, and it was remade in this bonkers way. I was going to cry. It was going to happen. And that was definitely one of them where it's like again, the subtlety of the writing, and especially, like, I don't know why it got me so much, but when Barrett tells Cloud, he says, like, tell me she's going to be safe. And then he said, like, I won't be mad at you if you're wrong. Tell me she's going to be safe. And then he said, like, no, you're probably right. I would probably kill you. I was like, something about that line was just, like, so real and so human. It was just...
Well, and just, we were talking about, the Avalanche crew earlier, just... because of what they did throughout the whole game, and especially Chapter 4, just the scenes of Jesse's death and Big's death hit so much harder than they do in the original game. And, like, it's so much harder, it's not even funny.
Yeah. I loved the build up to Barrett finding out that they were dead as well. Mm-hmm. Like, there were a couple times in the minutes leading up to that scene where he was just like, well, if they survived, then maybe the rest of my crew is alive. Let's go find them. And they chose not to say, hey, by the way, they're dead. They're just like, now's not the time. Now's not the right time to break the news to them. And then when they finally do, it's just like, oh my God, that hit so hard. Plus the music in that scene also really, really helped play that up too. Mm-hmm. Chapter 12's music is amazing.
And just the cinematic of the play falling and freaking Kate Sith being there.
Yeah.
I mean, which I've heard people say afterwards, if you're someone new to Final Fantasy VII, then you just watch this like emotional, like huge emotional scene. You're sitting here crying, and then there's this anthropomorphic cat. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah, what the hell is that doing though?
But for me, I was like, that was another time that I shouted out loud. I'm like, wait, what? What?
It's a boy.
Yeah, but that whole like Chapter 12 into Chapter 13 was like, I think after that, like, I have to go. I have to sit down because after like Jesse's death definitely got like Biggs was like rough, and then I like you walk up the stairs, it's like I know what's coming and I'm dreading it so much. As someone who's played the original, I know what's coming, and you get up to Jesse and it's God. And the Erica Lindbeck or whoever who plays Jesse, just phenomenal. Yep. Something I didn't realize until Imran pointed out, when you fight Rude and Reno in that fight, apparently they like kind of hint as they're going up the tower that Reno kind of has a crush on Tifa, like he won't shoot at her, and Reno's like, what the hell, why didn't you shoot her or whatever. Apparently in that fight he won't attack Tifa unless she's the only one alive. Like if you switch the Tifa, he just won't. He won't attack.
So the best strat is to take out Reno and just switch the Tifa.
Yes,
and make sure that keep everyone else alive.
Accidentally one for sure. That would have helped.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
That's the strat for hard mode.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, Imran. That's why Imran said it. Imran said that. Yeah, I know this fight is really hard on hard mode, but hey, this is a pro strat. It's really funny.
That's great.
Yeah, I guess before we get into the end, also Red 13, I think he was really cool in this game. Obviously didn't really get enough time to like really get to like see him, but as far as his portrayal, I think it's really cool, you know.
And Hojo's a creepy motherfucker.
Yeah, it's been so long since I played the original. We did not know who Red 13 was by this point in the original game, right? We run into him like Cosmo Canyon or something.
No, you get him here. It happens in pretty much the same way. Okay. But obviously in the original game, you keep going and you go on to his whole thing or whatever. Like he's introduced at the very end there. In the original game, Hojo's trying to breed Red 13 and Aerith, and it's like super fucked up. But
there are little hints of that in this one.
Well, there's like no, but we're gonna have mate with an actual human.
Yeah, they go out of their way to say human baby.
Yeah, it's gonna be a super soldier with very specific genes.
Yeah. And this is one of the few things I do think Red 13's introduction in the original game is actually a little better, because like even though that whole plot's like really fucked up, it kind of like helps show how fucked up Hojo is. He's supposed to be. But him like busting out of there and saving Aerith, I think was kind of a cooler introduction. In this one, I kind of feel like Red 13 just kind of happens, and then like they talk to him for like 3 seconds, and then the party's like, all right, cool, talking dog, let's go. It's like they were very quickly, you know. It just felt like, oh, he just joined the party because he joined the party. But I'm super excited. Red 13 is like my favorite character from the original. I think his Cosmo Canyon storyline is like amazing. So I'm so excited about that. I just wish that we could have played as him, but I understand why. It's the very end of the game, but still sad.
I would have. I really enjoy Red 13 for sure. I just wish that like I could make him run across that stupid grate and pull the switch just maybe 10 times faster than he did. If I didn't have to wait for him to decide, yes, I will sit where you want me to sit so that you can push the button. And then you push the button, he runs over there. Oh, God, it just takes so freaking long.
I did appreciate, though, that he has to jump up and like dangle on the lever.
Yes, that was adorable. Like a little cat in the hang in there poster.
All right, do you have anything else? Does anyone have anything else before we plunge into insanity?
We're already insanity.
I don't think I do.
I mean, it's Final Fantasy VII. It's a giant like sci-fi soap opera.
Yep.
And that's why I love it. All right. Well, let's talk about the ending of this VGMO game. So, yeah, you bust out of Shinra, and it feels like it's going, you know, the same way the original goes, more or less. You get in the 1920s car and the motorcycle and go crazy. Fight the Moto Spike, whatever the hell his name is, and I like failed that 3 times because I suck at the driving. But yeah, you get to the end, and it's like we walk out to the end of the road, and I'm like expecting credits, and I'm like, holy shit, they did it! They like nailed this without a hitch. This was like absolutely perfect. I like thank you Square. I'm like getting ready, getting my celebratory beer ready. Oh wait. We're opening a portal to time. We're opening up a time portal. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? What the fuck is about to happen?
Like, not over yet.
I had this like seeky feel. I was staring at this portal. I'm like, what in God's name is on the other side?
So it was like, you think you can end a Final Fantasy VII game without fighting me? You're wrong.
Yeah, so then this whole ending, I guess I'll I mean, you've already heard like some of me and Jeff's thoughts, but if anyone else hasn't, I've been all over the damn place with the end of this game. Like my thoughts just changed like the wind with like every passing theory. I still am of the belief that not doing this whole time stuff and instead going forward with the story, again, not as a one-to-one. I'm not a purist who thinks that it has to be the one-to-one, because this game wasn't one-to-one. I think this game did a very, very good job of sticking to the normal, like the overall arching story of Final Fantasy VII, but also saying like, we're going to introduce the Avalanche as not just a group of 5 people. It's this big, larger thing that you're the extremist group of. We're going to like take the Wutai War, which was a very cool but severely underutilized plot in the original, and make that into a whole big propaganda thing that Shinra's
plaster
doing
over the place like, hey, we're probably using this more in the future.
And like that was, as someone who's like super into all this lore, like every time I heard people talk about like Wutai, I'm like, this is fucking awesome. It's like this corporation basically using you to start a war to profiteer off of, basically. Yeah. And it's like, that just makes so much sense and it's so good.
Oh yeah, I just thought about it. I know this is probably not a crazy thing. It might happen in the original game. I don't know. Mm-hmm. They're probably going to continue with the Wutai propaganda by making it like Avalanche killed President Shinra working for Wutai. Yeah, that's exactly how they're going to.
It's so cool. So cool.
Yeah, exactly how they're going to spin that.
But like where I was going is like I those type of changes where it adds context and it like beefs up and makes the points of the Final Fantasy VII hit harder. I still am of the belief that it would be a better overall game if they had stuck to that, if they were like sticking with that for onwards, you know, which they still kind of probably will, but obviously they're going to go off the rails in some ways. And I don't completely buy into but it would be so boring because we all know where it's going. We all know where this game was going. Do we feel like this game was weakened by that? Because I definitely don't. If the game had just ended there at the roads, I don't think people would be like, oh, it was phenomenal, but it's so boring because we just know. No, I think that we would be hyped out of our minds for the next one. So that's why, like, I think that this ending is not necessarily warranted. That said, the more that I dig into it, I am interested in the questions that are being asked. I definitely want to get your opinion, Chad, because I've talked to Jeff for an hour about this.
Yeah, I'm someone who is not like Final Fantasy, like you, Final Fantasy, your favorite game of all time, and you're super into the lore. I thought it was a really, really cool game when I was a kid, and I thought the universe is cool. But seeing this, I had the opposite reaction where I was like, oh shit, there are so many possibilities now. Anything can happen. Aerith could live for some reason somehow. There are things like we could meet entirely new people that we've never even known were in this universe before. And they're like, that to me was really exciting. And again, it's been so long since I played the original game that even though some of what happened in this part was repetitive or that's something that I should have known was coming, I was still surprised by it. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that happened. That was so cool. So like the newness of it to me and the exciting opportunities that are out there is really, really fascinating to me. That in combination with the fact that I'm a sucker for that type of like, it's not really a parallel universe, but like it's kind of a sequel where the original game has happened, and they're trying to make sure, or maybe it's happening concurrently, and they're trying to make sure that it's going the same way. Like that is super cool, just from like a sci-fi time travel kind of view for me. It makes me think of like the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie, and how it's like they do exist in different. And it's like that's really cool and fascinating to me. The fact that it all kind of ties together and that both of them have happened. That's cool.
I mean, I will say, like, again, I'm not like one way or the other. I mean, as a reveal, it's pretty fucking awesome. I mean, it's a pretty just like out of left field, like what the fuck, you were not expecting this, but it's a cool reveal because it happens and it just feels like absolute crazy bullshit that you never could have seen coming. But then you start replaying the game and you're like, oh, these whispers that I was just like, oh, this is some weird Genova thing, just kind of writing it off as, you start playing the game and you're like, oh shit, they were messing with Aerith at the beginning because Sephiroth had delayed you and you weren't going to get there at the right time. So they had to make sure that you see her. They had to hold her up there so that the timeline would keep going. And they break Jesse's leg because Barrett had taken you off the mission. And if that happened, then the timeline wouldn't go, whatever. And then it's really well set up because it starts out subtle like that, but then as Sephiroth starts fucking with things more, they have to start getting desperate until you have the harrowing thing of them throwing Wedge out the window. Apparently, we at least think. I mean, Game of Thrones, we didn't see it happen, so he might be probably not dead. But
There is not a Game of Thrones. This is the general storytelling thing.
So yeah, I mean. There is something to be said that I am now replaying this game and looking at every little detail and seeing everything in a new light. There is something to be said for that. That is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a kind of small thing. This is a kind of small thing to go with. When you meet Aerith in the church and you're running away from Reno, at some point you get to the back thing and Aerith almost falls over the ledge and kind of down to the bottom floor, and the ghost kind of helps her up. It's well, it makes sense. Oh, why would it do that? Oh, because if she fell, she would have been captured right then and there. And Cloud would have had the motivation to really save her this time, or as much so.
That's why, sometimes, looking back at it, the best reveals are the ones that when you look back at it a second time, it's how did I not get this? And that, it almost feels overt in some ways when you play it a second time.
Right. When you see them at the end of chapter or at the end of the motorcycle thing and they're literally holding up the bridge so you can get out from under it and those kind of things, how did I not realize that was happening?
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are the best type of reveals. And it definitely does when you're going forward now. And I want to get your opinion on this too, because I'm still in the same way that when I was talking to Jeff, that even though I still would rather have the normal, just we continue the story, I am kind of fascinated and interested in a Sephiroth. This Sephiroth is one that has experienced the original timeline, or at least knows what's going to happen. So now he's going back and he's like, okay, what can I do to make this not happen? That's interesting to me. An alternate timeline with Zack being alive is kind of a bummer to me. I kind of struggle to see how this doesn't get super cringy, because if I have to watch two different Cloud Barrett and Tifa's talk to each other from different timelines, I just can't get excited for that. I just can't.
You don't want to see them standing in front of each other doing the mirror thing for a second, whoa, there's two of me. Yeah, the Zack thing I'm indifferent about. I mean, I thought it was oh my god, cool. They're tying in moments of Crisis Core into this and then changing it up. I'm indifferent about it. If he's in the next one, great. If he's not a part of it at all, great. I don't care. But yes, the Sephiroth being this, not all knowing, but he knows what's happening and he's going back and tinkering, almost like Thanos in Endgame, where he's I saw my death and now I'm coming here to make sure that I can do it right the first time. That is super interesting to me as a plot device. And I'm really curious how that plays out in whatever's coming next.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you have any takes on any of this?
Trying to think to add on.
Just you and top.
Yeah. Yeah, the Sephiroth thing's very interesting. Yeah, I am very curious, especially since it's not just the original game. A lot of hints towards Advent Children of all things.
So all right, Chad, are you ready for reveal number 2?
Ready.
Okay, so you listen to our. I'll refresh what the now probably wrong theory is for people that you listen to our wrong theory. That there's 3 whispers that you followed at the end. The original theory was that they were Cloud, Tifa, and Barrett from the future, because one of them has a sword hand, one has guns, one fights with their fist. And when you assess them, it says they're from the future. They're from a future timeline, manifest now or whatever. So that was the obvious answer. But when people looked into it more, even with Cloud, Barrett, and Tifa, it was kind of there were weird things that were kind of off. The sword was in the left hand for the Whisper when Cloud's right-handed. The gun one had 2 guns when Barrett obviously only has 1. I think there was something with Tifa that was kind of off, but or it has one glove hand for Tifa or whatever. So it's everything was kind of there but kind of off. Then people started pointing out that in Advent Children, there is the 3 basically like weird Sephiroth Genova kids. It's basically his shitty little kids are all trying to like resurrect him. And people have now pointed out that all 3 of those, there is one that fights with a sword grafted on his hand. It's on his left hand. Another one, he has one gun, but he always gets another gun. Like in over half the movie, he's fighting with 2 guns. And the other one fights with like one gloved hand. And all of them use the same elements: fire, thunder, and ice.
Shit.
And we're going even further, Chad. They use
Oh my god, I can't take it.
Some of the moves those Whisper use are moves that those people use in the Advent Children movie. And they remember when they've used into Bahamut?
Uh-huh.
The children, some of Bahamut and Advent Children. So yeah, there's too much there.
God, I gotta go rewatch that now.
I'm probably about to go rewatch it because it's obviously important.
I mean, there's too much there for it to not be that.
Which,
oh my god, yes.
and people are wondering if this is Advent Children Sephiroth, but also like I don't completely know, because I mean it would make sense if it is those 3 that they're coming back trying to change this, because if the original timeline doesn't happen, they would never exist. They didn't exist until after Final Fantasy VII, until Advent Children or whatever. So they would have to, like, I'm wondering if this is Advent Children, or at least a post-Advent Children Sephiroth, who's going back to change this, and those 3 kids are aware of his plans, so like they're going back trying to thwart him. So
that's why they work for the
exist.
Whispers.
And that's why, like, because the Whispers and Sephiroth are like weirdly, like, they're against each other kind of, but then at the end they're kind of together. It's a kind of a weird thing you don't completely like understand. And I mean, like, they would have reasons to be against each other, but they're also like kind of part of him, so who knows, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like more to me like Sephiroth's plan was for them to take care of the Whispers, so that kind of like, oh, Whispers aren't a thing. That makes my plan to change the timeline easier.
Right, yeah. I feel like 100% it's Sephiroth goading them into making sure that they do destroy the timeline, and making sure that the Whispers are like completely out of the picture, so he can do whatever the fuck he's going to do in the next installment.
Yeah. And I mean, this past week has been really fun, of just like, okay, we all think we know what's going on, and someone on Reddit is like, actually,
you see, and this idea,
yeah. People are like pulling out like random there was some Final Fantasy phone game that apparently had lore that had to do with this. Like, this is becoming Kingdom Hearts.
Let's go, baby. I've been training my whole life for this.
Even Crisis Core is like pretty important now, and it's trapped on the PSP. You can't even play it on modern consoles. It sucks.
God, I know.
I'm trying to think if like there's some kind of weird bullshit licensing thing that Square did for a reason they can't like bring that to any other console, because it's so weird that it feels like most PSP games are playable on something, or at least a lot of the big ones are playable at least on something.
Yeah.
I don't even think it was like Crisis Core is playable even on the Vita.
It's not. I think it was physical only for some reason.
Yeah, when a lot of things are playable on PSP.
So it's about the hardest thing to possibly get right now.
Oh, and people are probably charging like hundreds of dollars on eBay for it now or something. So yeah.
And that kind of goes again. There has to be something with that game in particular, because like Final Fantasy Type 0 was it was either PSP or it was Vita, or I think it was PSP. It was the like Agito 13 or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And they turned it into Type 0 and brought it to PS4. So, and then they're releasing now like as many Final Fantasy VII, or as many Final Fantasies as they can, as many platforms as possible. But then that one is still MIA everywhere.
Yeah. And especially if it's now like story relevant. Now like a bunch of people, like I would go buy that game if you let me right now, 100%.
Yeah.
Like, gotta do my research, you know. The only other thing that I'm still kind of hung up on with this whole process of this ending, though, is still Aerith, because it's like really hard to pinpoint what she knows and when she knows it, because it seems like she knows more, obviously knows more about what's going on than the party. And sure, there's even things where like she visits Cloud in that vision. I didn't get Aerith's scene, but I watched it online. And she tells him not to fall in love with her. Ding, ding, ding.
Right.
You know? And there's lots of things like that. But then also, she's definitely not all-knowing. And there's definitely a lot of parts in the game where she seems just as surprised about the events as everyone else. You know, like she just seems like a normal person. And at the very end, she is practically a different character. She, like, when you get to the end of that road, something's happened to her. And she, like, is just aware of everything. And I just hope that we get some answer for, like, why that change happened, you know? Like, is she getting visions? Are the whispers giving her visions?
Not anymore.
She was learning it from the Mako, and the live stream was talking to her in her visions.
Yeah, probably some crazy bullshit.
Sephiroth was slipping her notes under the door.
It very well might have been. I mean, we might learn that Sephiroth was feeding her information so that she thinks, like, oh, fuck, I'm going to die, and meteor's going to come down. Well, it's this time of the podcast again where we lose. Here we are again.
Welcome back.
It's going to happen every little bit, I guess. Very well, we might learn that Sephiroth has been feeding her this information, but feeding her, like, look, you're going to die. Look, meteor's coming. Look at this or whatever, so that she's like, oh, God, I have to tell the party. We have to veer off course. And then Sephiroth's like, yes.
Yes, my children.
Is Mr. Burns in the background? Ugh, excellent.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm fascinated. I still do think, I thought the very last chapter, like, it's hype on its surface level, but I thought it kind of, like, when I was looking at it, I was like, all right, well, hello, Kingdom Hearts boss. It just didn't even look fun. It didn't look like it fit with the rest of the game, like, at all. And there's certain things that make me think that this is going to be drastically different. Like the end when you fight Sephiroth and you, like, come down onto him and it does that whole, like, hard cut back and forth to Cloud and Sephiroth. That is identical to the very, very end of Final Fantasy VII, the original. So if they're doing that here, that's one of those things that tells me, well, we're not going anywhere near that. We're going so far off course because it's basically like, oh, we're giving you the end now, so hop off if you're you know.
What's the significance of when Sephiroth tells Cloud at the very end, he's like 7 seconds to go or 7 seconds left or something like that? What does that mean?
There are a bunch of theories. One that I saw people talk about that I don't think people kind of chalking up to coincidence at this point is apparently the original game, Cloud technically has 7 seconds to save Aerith when she's killed. But people were kind of chalking that more up to coincidence. But people are more looking at it's related to Meteor.
Yeah, because also apparently there's somewhere you can pause and read a description of that thing in the game, and it says that, like, Sephiroth is talking to Cloud 7 seconds before the end of the world. Is basically what the description says. So
gotcha.
I think it's something that we're not supposed to really be able to know. It's going to be something that at the end of this whole remake thing, it's going to be like, oh shit, that's what it meant, bro.
That's the 7 seconds. Quick time events, boys.
They just want us to sound even more like conspiracy theorists when we're screaming, the 7 seconds, what does it mean? Oh, God.
And it's really just going to be like 7 silver medalists in the Olympics all standing next to each other like, oh, it was the other seconds. That's what the whole time.
Nomura.
Oh my God.
What do you guys think about, I didn't realize this until after, or as I was getting close to the end of the game, like around like end of chapter 17, I was like, we're going to finish this game and we're not really going to have accomplished much. Like overall, we lost.
Yeah.
None of the bad guys are dead, aside from President Shinra, who is really more of just like a figurehead for the bad guys. And just like the plate got blown up, all of our friends and family's homes are destroyed, our bars destroyed, and we didn't really accomplish anything. We lost, and all the bad guys are getting away.
Hey, but we can change time.
I mean,
you're right.
Yeah, in a way, that was how this was always going to. And I mean, not as an excuse exactly, but it's also one of those things that, like, I don't know. I mean, in video games, we're used to when you play a giant 50-hour video game or 40-hour video game or whatever, that you conclude and you beat the bad guy, and it's like, oh, right, we did that story. That's what we're used to in this. But, like, I see it more as, like, you know, there's lots of movies I love that just end with, like, boom, cliffhanger, like, oh shit, and then you wait for the next part and everything, and like that's always cool to me. I like crazy cliffhanger endings, and I kind of see this that way. The whole like changing fate thing does kind of give this somewhat more of finality, I feel like, than
it would have otherwise, 100%.
Because it's definitely like this is a turning point, rather than it just like ends. This is like yeah, we didn't win. In fact, kind of Sephiroth got exactly what he wanted. He wanted you to do this, but this is definitely like, you know, I think whenever we look back at this whole series of games, we're gonna look at it as like the first game and then the rest of the games. Because this is like
a 40-hour prologue to whatever comes next.
Mm-hmm. Like, we were playing a damn requel. It's a remake sequel. It's like, what?
Yep.
It's pretty insane. I mean, so what do y'all think about the next part? I mean, are you expecting it to completely go off the rails and we are just like, it's unrecognizable? Or are you expecting, like, I kind of feel like I'm trying to tell myself that they wouldn't have made this game this incredible and this faithful to the remake, to the original, if they were just going to like not even have the locations and beats of the next one. You know,
I think all the big locations and general beats are still going to be prevalent in these games. Just what everything that entails is just going to be different. Like more stuff's going to happen in some places. Like the Wutai stuff is going to be more prevalent in places in different places and all that kind of stuff, just kind of for all this stuff. As we get on to, like, say, let's say the third game, that might be where we see more changes. It might be a gradual thing. It might be we start 2 and it's pretty much mostly the same, but a couple more conversations about what just happened at the end of this game, because for them it'll be like just right after that, you imagine. And as we go through the game, more and more stuff will change to where we're kind of used to, like, okay, a lot of stuff kind of steadily changed throughout this from the original game, and going to the third game, it's when it might go off even more, but maybe not to the point where everything's different and, you know, we're still going to the main locations and stuff, and some of the general story beats are happening. Yeah, because like Rufus is still a thing, and as far as we know, his motivations are the same.
Like, I mean, in the weird way, this game does end more or less at the same place, like with the same objective and everything to the original game. Like they're leaving Midgar in search of Sephiroth. Obviously, in this game, they fought Sephiroth and know a lot more about him, and they have some concept of what they just did about destroying Fate, but it's generally the same. Yeah, I don't know, Chad, what do you think about the next part?
I wonder how meta they're going to get in the next one. Like, are we going to have instances where they go somewhere that you originally happening like regular, but then something is slightly different, and they're like, wait a minute, that feels like it's not supposed to be here. Like, it's out of place or out of time, and like almost like there's glitches in the world because they changed fate. Like, are they going to acknowledge that with the characters, that it seems weird or off, or is it just going to be like, hey, this is completely new and we want to tell the story that's different than what we thought we wanted with the original?
I don't think they're going to go that far to like where the characters think things are necessarily off. No. For the most part, there might be some times where that happens. I think,
but I think it's going to kind of, and I'm hoping that it's kind of like what you're alluding to, like a more gradual build-up of, like, you know, we start this next game, we go to Calm and we hear Cloud's backstory, and it's pretty much exactly like the game, and then we go to Costa del Sol, and it's like, okay, this has just been Final Fantasy, and then it'll be like one thing where it's like, we as the player are like, wait a minute, where's this? You know, what? And I think the characters will not realize, but we'll be like, okay, shit, you know, it's gonna slowly do things like that, because I feel like there's no way that this doesn't at least have moments that are drastically different, because the end of this game was very much, I mean, it's already been pretty meta as far as I will not accept any other explanation. I mean, the plot ghosts, the like whispers, were definitely at least partially like emblematic of people telling them, oh, you got to keep it the same, like fans saying like, oh, you got to keep everything the same or whatever, and this was them unleashing and getting free from the angry Reddit commenters and everything. Like, that's definitely part of this, and I don't think that they do that whole crazy ending and do the unknown journey will continue and not like severely alter some things. And I mean, but that's where like I have so much trouble thinking about what the differences, because if Sephiroth knows that his actions are going to go kind of unpunished now, what's stopping him from just immediately going up to the party and stab? Like, they just kill them now, you know?
We'll have to find out, because Sephiroth has a plan. It's all according to Keikaku.
I don't know which one I would prefer. Whether they go from here. I don't think they could do the second option, but the first option would be they go from here and they 95% of the way stick with the original story with like some intervention with Sephiroth and things like that throughout. Or whether they take this as an opportunity to completely veer and make it a story and a game about Sephiroth intervening with things, and then suddenly becomes something completely different than Final Fantasy VII. And maybe that's why, I don't know, maybe that's why they don't call this one Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1.
Oh, it's 100%.
Maybe
why? Yeah.
Maybe the next one is going to be like Final Fantasy VII 2 or Final Fantasy, maybe just 16. Maybe 16 is just taking 7 and making something completely different of it.
Yeah, that's the thing that just rubbed me the most wrong about this whole thing, is that it was like 98% my perfect recreation of Final Fantasy VII, and then it seemed like 2% we're going out there or whatever, which is why I'm going to be a little bummed if we get the first game is a perfect recreation of Midgar and then it is completely unrecognizable after that. Then I'm going to be like,
yeah,
guys, what? Like, I mean, I guess I'm happy to have this game, but why? Like, why did we start this way?
I don't think they're going to go completely off to where things are completely different.
If they just use Final Fantasy VII as a setting for 16, and it's just like, this is all just completely other crazy ass things that are happening in this world.
That would be kind of bullshit to like start this way and then like completely veer off course that fast. And I just have to have faith, because like I adored the writing of this game. I cried like 7 times in this game. Like I loved it. I loved it so much. So I got.
Did you also cry 2 times?
Always.
So 12. I have to have faith that they are going to write something that I will also have that much emotional weight to. It's just, again, like I said when I was talking to Jeff, it feels like I was playing with my Legos and another kid came up and grabbed my Legos and said like, okay, now we're doing this. And I'm like, Yep. Only other thing, if this is Sephiroth from an alternate timeline, if that is what's happening, that means that real Sephiroth is still in the Northern Crater. So are we going to get real Sephiroth realizes that this alternate Sephiroth has tried to thwart his plan, so he's like, hey, yo. Or do they team up? I don't want any of them.
I can see them potentially going to Sephiroth's older mind went into current Sephiroth's body.
I hope it's that.
And some weird power transfer stuff to make him maybe stronger. I don't know.
Do we get old Sephiroth teaming up with Cloud to take on alternate Sephiroth?
See, as soon as we get to evil alternate Cloud, I'm like, nope. Record.
No. He didn't say evil alternate Cloud. He said good alternate Sephiroth.
Yeah, we turned regular Sephiroth.
I don't know. I'm so curious. To see where this goes.
I just hope Goofy's playable in the next one.
Same.
That's what we're all for. Well, does anyone have any last thoughts? We didn't touch on the music very much. The music this is my new favorite soundtrack of all time. It is just...
Oh my God. I cannot wait for this to come to Apple Music and Spotify.
I hope it does, because Square Enix has put out like everything else. I hope that after enough time is going on, they'll just put it on there.
I guess something we can talk about. I'm curious what you think, Chad. How do you feel about Biggs being alive at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm not like freaking out like everyone's supposed to die, but
so yeah, like I said during the thing, or I don't know, I get mixed up with, like what I talked about recording and off, but the way I generally feel like since they kept him alive and kind of built up his backstory a little bit, like I try to hope that they have a plan for him and it's worth him being around, but I hope they keep Jesse dead, and I'm also kind of
poor Jesse.
Yeah, I just don't. Just after all that, I don't know if I, okay with them pulling like they all died during this chapter, or made it look like oh they all survived. You just find out at
because Chad, if you don't know, like next to Biggs on that table, people have pointed out that it's Jesse's gloves and
it looks like Jesse's headband.
That is, if Jesse miraculously survived that too, that's inexcusable. I legitimately think there's no way to make that okay story-wise, because Jessie dying was kind of the centerpiece of the emotion of the story, like, because you cared about her so much, and that was such a turning point and such a thing or whatever. Like, yeah, I already don't feel great about them pulling the punch with Biggs. I just kind of hate when any like work of fiction like it's like, oh, we killed them, and like they miraculously survive just because we need them for the plot. And there's no real good reason for it. It's just we need them for the plot, but we wanted to make you cry. It's like I like pull the punch, or take the punch, and especially Biggs is one of those Biggs and Wedge both were like, okay, we care about them, but they aren't like the linchpin of this.
Yeah,
Jesse. If you bring Jesse back, then I just
and I kind of hope they keep Wedge dead, because then it's like, oh, you pulled. We killed him twice, but we didn't. Yeah, because I believe that whole thing, like at the whenever that was, where the ghost kind of pushed him out a window. You see him, it faced the black, but you hear the window crashing in. Wedge kind of has a very definitive, like, dying line.
And story-wise, he should be dead. Because that should be them showing us that the Whispers, like, will go to any length to, like, make sure the
at that point, they're going to the extremes of, like, oh, we're just not going to narrowly push you to your death. Like, no, we're just going to violently take you out a window so you fall and die like you're supposed to.
Right. And that's supposed to be the big, like, okay, something's up with these Whispers. You know, like, we can't, And yeah, I mean, because if Jesse's alive, then it's literally that whole chapter 12 that we just talked about being so emotional. All of it's gone.
Yeah, it totally takes all that
of
away.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because they already kind of pulled the punch where it's like, a lot of Sector 7 survived, whereas in the original they all died, and in this one they were able to get out. But Yep. Alrighty. Well, any last thoughts, gentlemen?
Nope.
What a game.
What a game.
Yep.
Just
what a freaking ride. I loved it. It was great.
Still can't believe it's real. And I'm replaying it, and I am not at all like, I am just as invested the second time through as I was the first. Yeah.
Yep.
I just, again, seeing my favorite game just remade in this way is just something I never, ever, ever dreamed would be possible. And like even stuff like RE2 Remake for people who really like those games or whatever, like that's cool to see. Like, oh, they look all the familiar stuff or whatever. But this is so much more than just, oh, look at the familiar stuff. It's like we're going to take every beat of this and just like make it meaty and just like add stuff in there you never thought was possible. And that's why I don't say this lightly. I think this is my new favorite game of all time. I mean, it took my favorite game of all time and just enhanced the story. It kind of showed me some of the flaws that I knew were there, but it was just like, we're going to make every single beat of the original stronger in this one. And it's just...
Yeah, but they're charging you $60 for only 5% of a game.
You're right.
Oh my God.
Right. Anyone who's still holding that argument now after playing the game, I don't understand. If you think that you just played like, oh, it's too short or there's not enough to do, I'm like, what the hell? Get out of here.
Hey, if it's not 100 hours, what's the point? I'm just saying.
Yeah. God. Haven't you ever played The Witcher? God, come on.
Witcher, Persona 5, and Dragon Quest XI are the only true games released in the last however many years.
Man, you just get Witcher, Persona 5, and Final Fantasy VII. You don't have to get another game for like 4 years and just play this. You're good.
I don't know. I beat Final Fantasy VII in 70 hours in 2 weeks. So
yeah, I beat it in 7 weeks. Or 7 days.
7?
I think it was actually 8. Theory
Get out of here!
Theory busted.
Wait. Squall confirmed.
Yeah, we did it.
Oh God.
Yeah, I can't wait for it to become the Final Fantasy cinematic universe and like lightning comes in and everyone else comes in.
Yeah, I say Squall, but we all know if they did that, it'd be Noctis or Lightning first.
Both. They'd fuse. They'd Dragon Ball fuse.
Yeah.
It'd be a Final Fantasy 14 crossover, so they can promote that MMO first. That's for sure.
Nice. Yeah. Well, Chad, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad we could do this. Been pumped for this. I hate Holden couldn't come. If he finishes it at some point, we can have y'all both back on to talk about it again.
I don't see him finishing anytime soon.
Tom Nook just has a stranglehold. That debt's rough, man.
Yep. He is so invested in Animal Crossing, he can't do anything else.
Well, let everyone know where they can find you and your wonderful content.
You can find us. We are our company's called Affable Idiots, and I use the word company lightly. It's basically just a brand under which you can find us. The gaming section of Affable Idiots called Respawn Aim Fire, and we also have some fun other stuff that we do called and also with you AAWY. So check us out, follow us on Twitter, interact with us, play along with us. It's just fun shit.
Fun shit. All right. Well, speaking of fun shit, I need to go play the game more. I can't stop.
Nice.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Peace.
Bye.
Bye.